The royal palace of Velmara was a fortress in its own right, enchanted walls, guards stationed at every corner, and defensive runes woven into its very foundation. But no defense was impenetrable. Deep within the stone corridors, shadows moved. A figure, clad in blackened leather, slipped past a pair of patrolling guards. The Solmara Empire's spies were among the best in the world, masters of stealth, illusion, and assassination. Their orders were clear: eliminate the foreigners. Marcus Cruz had always been a light sleeper. Years of space missions and military training had conditioned his body to wake at the slightest disturbance. So when he felt the faintest shift in the air, the almost imperceptible whisper of fabric moving in the dark, his instincts roared to life. He rolled off his cot in a split second, narrowly dodging the glint of a dagger. A figure loomed above him, blade aimed for his throat. Without thinking, Marcus lashed out, catching the attacker's wrist and twisting hard. The assassin grunted but did not cry out, trained to fight in silence. The struggle was brutal and fast. The assassin slashed, and Marcus barely managed to avoid the blade, his forearm taking a shallow cut. Marcus? A second later, the door burst open. Mike Morgan was there, sidearm already raised. Bang! A single Magitech-infused round pierced the assassin's chest. The figure staggered, crimson spilling onto the stone floor. Silence. Then, as if responding to the attack, the palace erupted into chaos. Ryan was in his workshop practicing his newfound ability with mana when the alarm bells rang. He barely had time to react before a second assassin lunged at him from behind. He turned instinctively, mana surging through his veins. Without thinking, he raised his hand. A pulse of energy crackled at his fingertips. A shockwave burst from his palm, sending the attacker flying into a wall. Ryan stared at his hand in disbelief. More figures moved in the shadows. 3 more assassins. Ryan grabbed a mana grenade off his workbench and threw it. A flash of blue energy engulfed the room as the explosion knocked the assassins back. He sprinted for the door, heart pounding. By the time Ryan reached the main hall, the entire palace was under siege. Guards were locked in combat with black-clad Solmara agents, steel clashing against steel. Spells exploded in bursts of light as mages fought against unseen enemies, their runes flickering. Alara appeared at Ryan's side, her staff glowing with ethereal energy. "We are under attack," Ryan exhaled. "Yeah, no kidding." From the far end of the hallway, Marcus, Mike, Caitlin, and Kevin regrouped, weapons raised. "Status?" Marcus barked. "Assassins. At least a dozen. Maybe more," Alara said. Her eyes narrowed. Mike chambered a fresh round into his pistol. "Then let's clean house." The battle raged throughout the palace. Mike and Marcus led the guards, utilizing cover-based tactics against the assassins' close-range strikes. Ryan, still learning to control his mana, fought alongside Alara, using both firearms and newly discovered energy blasts. Caitlin and Kevin worked to protect the wounded, holding the medical bay against attackers who sought to eliminate them. Despite the assassins' stealth and deadly efficiency, they were unprepared for modern warfare tactics. One by one, they fell. The last remaining agent, realizing the mission was lost, attempted to flee. Marcus caught him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. "Who sent you?" The assassin spat blood but said nothing. Alara stepped forward, placing her hand against his forehead. Her eyes flashed silver. "Speak." The assassin gasped, his resistance crumbling. "The Solmara Empire," he choked out. They know what you are building, and they will come." Then, before anyone could stop him, he bit down on something hidden in his mouth. A second later, he was dead. The room fell silent. Marcus exhaled, stepping back. Damn it. Alara's gaze darkened. This was only the beginning. As dawn broke over Velmara, King Alden gathered his war council. The Solmara Empire had sent assassins, proving that they saw Magitech as a threat. This was no longer a cold war of espionage and secrecy. It was a declaration of open war. Marcus stood before the king. "We need to strike first." Alden nodded. "You have my permission. Prepare for battle." Mike grinned. "Then, let's give them a war they'll never forget." The royal war room of Velmara was a grand chamber of stone and gold, its walls lined with ancient banners, each one representing a victory in the kingdom's long history. The air was thick with the scent of burning torches and parchment, and the tension in the room was almost suffocating. A massive stone table dominated the center, covered with maps, tactical markers, and scouting reports. Around it stood Velmara's most influential leaders, King Alden himself, flanked by his trusted generals and advisors. And now, for the first time, the Voyager crew stood among them. The attempted assassination had shattered any illusions of peace. The Solmara Empire had declared war, and Velmara needed to be ready. King Alden sat at the head of the table, his emerald gaze scanning the assembled officers, strategists, and military leaders. His enchanted gauntlet, a relic passed down through Velmara's lineage, hummed faintly as he rested his fingers against the map. "The Solmara Empire does not make idle threats," he began, his voice calm but firm. "The fact that they would risk sending assassins into my palace means they have already decided our fate." His eyes flicked toward Marcus Cruz, standing at the opposite side of the table. "Captain, your people have changed the course of history with your Magitech weapons. Now tell me, how do we ensure Velmara survives the storm that is coming?" Marcus stepped forward, his posture straight, his military instincts fully engaged. "We cannot wait for them to strike first," he stated, his voice steady. "If we do, we lose the advantage. The only way to survive this war is to hit them before they hit us." A murmur of agreement and unease spread through the War Council. General Vexen, a grizzled war veteran clad in blackened steel armor, frowned. "A preemptive assault is reckless. The Solmara Empire's army is vast, outnumbering our forces 3-1. Even with your so-called Magitech, we are not prepared for a direct confrontation." Mike Morgan, standing next to Marcus, crossed his arms. "We don't need to fight their whole army. We just need to slow them down." The king's expression darkened. "Explain." Mike tapped the map, his finger landing on a crucial trade route leading into Solmara-controlled territory. "This supply line is their lifeline. It fuels their war machine. If we disrupt it, cripple their logistics, we buy ourselves time to reinforce our armies and complete the Magitech integration into your forces." Ryan nodded, leaning over the table. "Hit them where it hurts. No supplies mean no reinforcements, no mana crystals for their mages, no enchanted weapons reaching their front lines." Alara, who had been silent until now, tilted her head. "Striking at their supply routes will not go unnoticed. If we make such a move, they will retaliate with full force." Kevin Scott, ever the analyst, adjusted his glasses. "That's exactly what we want. We need to control the battlefield, force them to fight on our terms." King Alden steepled his fingers. "And how do you propose we do that?" "With this," Ryan said, stepping back. From behind him, 2 Velmaran engineers rolled in a massive blue-covered sheet, revealing a new schematic. The council members leaned in. The king's eyes flickered with curiosity as he studied the blueprint, a massive siege weapon unlike anything Aetheris had ever seen. "Behold," Ryan said with a grin. "The Thunderstrike cannon." Gasps spread across the room. The Velmaran military was no stranger to siege weapons. Trebuchets, ballistae, and enchanted artillery had been used in past wars. But this was something different. General Vexen narrowed his eyes. "Explain." Ryan pointed at the key components on the blueprint. "Traditional siege weapons rely on mass and gravity to deliver damage. The Thunderstrike cannon uses mana-charged artillery shells, which explode on impact with a blast radius strong enough to destroy magical fortifications." The king studied the design. "Aetheris has seen siege weapons before. What makes yours any different?" Ryan tapped a secondary feature of the design, Magitech guided trajectory. Instead of aiming blindly, these cannons use rune-linked targeting systems that ensure accuracy from miles away. It's precision destruction at a scale no kingdom has ever seen before. Mike smirked. "It's the difference between throwing a rock and firing a sniper rifle." King Alden exhaled slowly. "Show me." The testing grounds outside the palace were a massive field used for magical experiments and military trials. At the far end of the valley, several massive stone boulders had been enchanted with magical barriers, simulating enemy fortifications. Ryan and his engineering team set up the first Thunderstrike cannon, the enormous siege weapon mounted on a rotating platform infused with stabilizing runes. The War Council watched from a safe distance. "Charge the core," Ryan ordered. The mana conduits glowed with power, humming as the cannon began to store pure arcane energy. Mike watched the energy gauge rise, then turned toward Marcus. "You want to do the honors?" Marcus grinned, stepping forward. "Wouldn't miss it. He placed his hand over the firing mechanism, pressing the activation signal. The cannon roared to life. A massive bolt of condensed mana shot forward, leaving behind a trail of blue fire. The moment it struck the enchanted boulders, the explosion shattered the landscape, sending shockwaves across the valley. The council members stared in stunned silence. General Vexen, usually hard to impress, finally muttered, "By the gods." King Alden slowly turned back to Marcus and Ryan. "How many of these can you build?" Ryan grinned. "With enough resources? Enough to win this war." With the Thunderstrike cannons now in production, Velmara had a new strategy. Marcus and Mike stood over the war table, pointing at a critical Solmara-controlled stronghold. Fort Iridan, one of their most important supply hubs, Marcus explained. "If we take it, we cut off their main trade route, forcing them to fight on our terms." Mike nodded. "A well-placed artillery strike will soften their defenses before our forces move in." The king folded his arms. "Then it is decided. Prepare the army. Fort Iridan will be ours." As night fell, Velmara's forces prepared for battle. Thunderstrike cannons were loaded onto transport wagons, enchanted for mobility. Mike's newly trained Magitech infantry checked their weapons, adjusting their mana shields. Alara gathered battle mages, preparing spell formations to counter Solmara's forces. Ryan, now wielding limited magical abilities, worked with engineers to ensure the weapons were stable. Marcus stood at the head of the forces, scanning the horizon. Tomorrow, they would strike first. Tomorrow, they would change the face of warfare forever. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the like button, share with fellow sci-fi fans, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of the journey. Stay tuned for more adventures. Here is another video I know you will enjoy.